Hello and welcome back to our podcast, episode number 4. Today we have Colby Fayock with us.
And Colby Fayock, if you don't know already, he's a great YouTuber. He creates a lot of tutorials around many topics like React.js, Next.js, Jamstack, etc. He's a developer advocate and so much more.
So in today's podcast, we discuss different topics like Next.js, Jamstack, and also we talked a little bit about his journey to become a developer's advocate. And if you, just like us, have no idea about what it entails, it will be a great episode for you.
Yeah, we absolutely had no idea on what Jamstack means, what developer advocate means, how you can become that, and so much more. So you have to listen to this podcast to the very end, because in the very end we also talk about how you can be a better programmer in your career with using things like GitHub and so much more. So stick till the end.
So what the hell are we waiting for? Let's get right into the podcast. So welcome Colby to our channel, The Programmer Couple, and thank you so much for taking the time out to come on to accept our invite and to come to the channel for a chit chat.
Exactly. This is the first time we are meeting, obviously virtually, but this is the first time we are interacting, I guess, in almost any way.
So first of all, we heard the good news that you have a baby, a new baby in the house. So congratulations.
Yes.
Very many congratulations.
Thank you.
For that.
Yeah,
So,
it's been a fun ride, challenging but a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, the first time YouTube recommended your video to us was about maybe a few weeks ago. And the first time I saw you on YouTube, I thought that you are still a kid who goes to college. You look so young.
Yes.
You look like you are 18, 19 or maybe 20 years old. And then we saw some of your conversations.
Yeah, we followed Francesco and Anya and James Q. Quick.
And
so we saw
Doria.
Yeah.
And we saw you have been working for 10, 15 years and we were like, wow.
Yeah, no, it's the baby face, and I can't grow a beard, so that's probably part of the reason too.
No, it works well for you though.
Well,
That's
appreciate
good.
it.
Yeah, so how's your life with the new baby? How's your work-life balance? How do you do all that?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's because we need to try to figure out our schedule between my wife and myself about how we can, give enough attention to our son and at the same time try to work. Right? It's challenging, and it's definitely not traditional 9 to 5 hours like you would typically work.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate that my company has been supportive about having a flexible schedule. So I try to get the work done when I can. I do end up finding the time, but might be really, really late at night sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. So your schedule must be crazy right now. You are active on YouTube, you are making courses, you are on Twitter, and you also do a full-time job where we have heard you are a developer advocate. We'll get into that a little later, but I can't even imagine. It must be a super crazy schedule.
Yeah, it's funny about the course because I was actually trying to finish that before the baby came, and I was fortunate that I was able to, because we were at a time, was like a race for time to try to get that together, because I knew that would be too stressful to try to work on it after. So I was fortunate I was able to, and then it just kind of launched afterwards.
Yeah.
It's great. I kind of think that we missed the first step. So for those who are listening to you for the first time, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, like a little bit of introduction?
Yeah. Sure. My name is Colby Fayock. I'm a developer advocate at Applitools, which means I do a lot of content creation, educational content creation, through things like YouTube videos. I write blog posts, stream here and there. Before that, I was a front-end engineer and UX designer. So that kind of led me towards wanting to teach people about the work that I do, and that's where I came in to be a developer advocate.
Okay, interesting.
Amazing.
So maybe I'm a little confused. Did you say that making YouTube videos and teaching people is part of your job, or is it separate?
No, it's definitely part of the job.
Oh, wow.
Before my role, it was separate because I was kind of trying to build a portfolio to look out for that kind of job. But yeah, developer advocacy, content creation isn't just the only thing about that kind of job, but it's definitely part of it. Because ultimately, as a role of a developer advocate, we're trying to help other developers learn different tools or, solve their problems that they're having with their own work. So whether that's, helping somebody with Applitools, which is a visual testing platform, whether it's helping somebody with that or some of the other work I do, like getting people up and running with Next.js. It's really just advocate. I mean, it's right in the title, right? It's advocating for the developers in the community as much as I can.
That's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I've been meaning to ask you this, what comprises, so like the title developer advocate, but like I wanted to know like what does the job consist of?
For sure. And it really depends on also the company that you go to. But, you know, the people who are kind of in it to help the community really see it as a role that works for the community instead of like just another way for the company to market their product, right? It's really ultimately helping the community. And by doing so, you're ultimately helping build that trust and value for the team that you're working on behalf of, right?
Okay, yeah, that's pretty awesome. But let's say someone listening or watching this video or podcast would be thinking that they can get into this field as an advocate. I guess that is not the ideal scenario. I guess being an advocate means you are experienced for at least a few years. The years don't really matter, but basically your experience, you know some problems that real developers will face or do face. So it's not a path that you can simply jump into, but maybe with the career, when the career moves on, you can maybe try that.
I think that's interesting because there's a lot of conversations around that. Like, so from my experience, I come off from being like a lead engineer and designer. So I do come with a lot of actual engineering experience where I can help actually put into context a lot of the problems that people are trying to solve, where I still think there is a role for people who don't necessarily have that experience because they still are able to have a lot of empathy for people who are at the beginning of their career. But there is something to be said about having that engineering experience because ultimately being able to have some of that context means you can help them in ways that somebody might not if they don't have that.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, and is there like a qualification sort of thing, like some minimum experience or like a qualification that a person who would like to be like an advocate would require for this kind of role?
I don't think there's any kind of strict numbers around that kind of thing. Because I've seen people get positions who don't have that experience and do really well in the job because they're very self-motivated to learn the stuff so that they can help others. It's really just dependent on the person and the company because also like the companies have different ways that they want to actually work with that person in order to advocate for the community. So maybe that is building video courses like I'm doing, or maybe it's writing blog posts, or maybe it's going to every single conference on the web, on the earth when the world is actually working again. There's a bunch of different ways that people can advocate for the development community. So it's really just kind of dependent on what they kind of need together.
Okay, no, it totally makes sense, and now we at least have a better idea, and maybe our viewers as well, what a developer advocate actually
entails.
Is. Exactly. So, on your YouTube channel, on Twitter, or all other social media platforms where you are active, what kind of content do you usually post? We know you are a big fan of React, Next.js,
but Jamstack,
and Jamstack.
Yep.
So do you usually make courses, tutorials? Like if people want to learn something from you, what can they expect?
Yeah, recently it's been a lot of content geared around Next.js, but when I say that, I've been using Next.js and React kind of as like the underlying tool of the things that I teach. So for instance, some of the stuff that I'm teaching is like, the one thing is working with browser events, and that doesn't necessarily have to do with Next.js, but I use Next.js as the way to spin up an application, just because that's kind of my framework of choice right now. But I really enjoy kind of finding a bunch of tools that might be challenging for somebody to actually integrate into their project and kind of guide them as to how you can actually get that up and running.
Perfect.
Sure. And for those who don't know, what exactly is Next.js? I know you use it with React and it's a framework.
Sure. So so I'll kind of start at like the bottom. So like React is the UI framework, right? Where you're actually kind of templating out the project. On top of that, they have their own kind of tool called Create React App, which spins up a React application. But it doesn't what it does is it ends up compiling the application out into like a single file where the application loads kind of a single page app, if you've ever heard that expression.
Yes.
But what Next.js does is kind of take that up another level, and similar to other frameworks like Gatsby, if you've ever heard of that one. But what it does is it provides a richer development and browser experience on top of that, where it can do things like pre-render pages, it can statically compile pages, which is really geared towards providing like a better experience for the people who are visiting the application. And also it really helps with things like performance, SEO. There's just a lot of benefits on top of that, but it provides a layer on top of React that makes it easier to build a lot of the things you would expect from a web application in 2021.
Like I recently started using Next.js recently switched jobs, and now I'm using Next.js. Earlier, I used to work with Angular more, and I loved it. And I know that you are a React fan, but I've been using both, and it's just my personal preference. I do still prefer Angular more. I think it's more structured, but both of them are great frameworks or libraries, and I mean they do what it's meant to do, single page applications. With Next.js, though, I like that we have like Node.js and React all in the same project. Like it's all in one kind of application. We have server-side rendering. But for those who might be confused, is it let's say your first page that is loaded by server, like server-side rendered, and then is it a single page application from then on after that, or is it a server-side rendered each and every page as long as the user is on it?
So that's a good question. So actually, I haven't really dug into, like, I'm 90% sure of this answer, but I'm pretty sure it's a single page application once it hits the browser, but I can't say that I've ever like 100% confirmed that. That's interesting. But the way that it typically works is once you hit the browser takes over, and it'll preload like smaller resources, which will help hydrate the next pages so that you can have those page to page navigations really quickly, all inside of the browser without having to make that additional request. So I'm like 99% sure that's the case, but
yes, same here. Even I'm not 100% sure. I've only been using it like since a couple of months, and I do know that single page applications have a great advantage that once it's loaded in the browser, we don't have to fetch anything again. Maybe just some JSON objects which are needed for the page, but we don't really have to fetch all the things, the whole page again and again. But I also do know that server-side rendered first page will really impact performance and will really help you in SEO and everything. So that's an interesting concept. Maybe we'll look into it after this interview. But we need to confirm that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one. And the nice thing about that is, in addition to being able to provide those like extra requests in the browser to load the additional pages, not only do they load it when you try to click through, they try to preload it intelligently. So if they try to predict which routes you're going to hit next, and if they can predict that route, they're going to try to start loading those resources. So ultimately, the experience for the person in the browser is the person visiting your application is going to have a better experience.
That's very interesting. So I have heard of lazy loading, in which we simply wait till the user clicks on something and then we load the page. Then there's eager loading combined with lazy loading, where you load the first page, but then you wait for user to do something, and in the background you fetch all the pages. But what you are saying is that, for example, I'm on page number 1, and page number 1 has links to page number 2 and 3. So we know the user cannot go anywhere else. So let's download 2 and 3. And not download 97 others. Is
so to be clear, like it doesn't just like automatically go through and download all the things. Like it tries to predict. So like if you're about to click on a particular button, right? Like maybe it's going to start loading those resources to make it a little bit faster.
Wow,
that's interesting. That's very interesting.
I had no clue. So thanks for telling us.
Yeah, but how does it predict? I mean, does it use AI, ML, some kind of predictive algorithm? Like, what's behind the scenes?
I don't know the technical bits behind it. I would imagine it's some kind of like handler detection on the actual elements to try to determine like where the links are, and if somebody goes near that.
My guess,
but I know there's.
Sorry for cutting you off. My guess would be, let's say there's a form, and in that form there are 5 different fields. As soon as the user starts maybe filling up field number 1, they kind of infer that
the obvious choice would be to fill the second field after that, and then the
and
third
submit
field.
the form in the end.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I know
we're just guessing over here.
There's also definitely third-party tools that I've seen. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I remember I think Gatsby used it, or where you can integrate that kind of experience where you're kind of preloading intelligently based off of predictive patterns of the people who are using the application, so that you can create that faster experience.
Yeah. Okay.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So the next thing that we really want to talk about is the Jamstack, because like it's really new for us, and I think it's the first time that we heard this term was like from you talking like
we are clueless.
In one of the interviews we heard that you're really heavy on Jamstack and you really love it and you're creating like a lot of content around it lately. So
and all the newsletters I follow, maybe even you don't know this, I follow like 3 or 4 newsletters, and all of them are now everyone is talking about Jamstack, and I'm like, what the hell it is? I have no clue.
Right.
Yeah. So enlighten us, please.
Sure. So it's kind of evolving, but it kind of stemmed from the idea of being able to serve like a website or a web app statically from the first request. So you were talking about server-side rendering before, right? Where you would hit the server, it would render that content and bring it back, as opposed to delivering that straight from a CDN, where you're just requesting a static HTML file from that CDN or from storage, so that it's not actually doing any of that processing on the back end of the server, right? It is going to be very fast, so that it's just that static file that you're grabbing. In the background, what's happening is you have a few different options where tools like Gatsby will go out, or even Next.js will statically compile all those different routes so that somebody can hit that static page off of the CDN. So ultimately, the goal is to serve a static file from a CDN in some fashion, which will deliver a faster response inside of the browser when somebody's trying to visit the site, as opposed to hitting the server to do that. But it's kind of evolving, because serverless functions, if you're familiar with the concept, it's not the same thing, but it kind of ties in really nicely to it. So people are kind of wondering how that actually kind of melts together and where the lines are actually drawn from what a Jamstack site is. It's interesting, and I'm not really sure where the kind of Jamstack gods are going to go with that answer, but that's kind of where it came from.
Okay, so I now I know a little bit more about Jamstack, but now I also have a lot of questions. So okay. So first of all, you said it's for static websites, right? Now, static websites, I know when I was in school or high school, static websites were just called HTML, CSS. Is it the same today?
So that's what gets delivered to the browser, and it can include the JavaScript files, to be clear. So like it's just static assets in the way that it's served on that first request, that first byte. But after that, it's just like any other single page application that we're talking about, where you can do all your dynamic stuff right inside of the browser. So it's really just about that first request that's going to be static. But after that, it can be as dynamic as you want. You can make any request in the browser to hydrate your application and provide that dynamic experience.
So
does that make sense?
Yes. So the first request will always be the views, the HTML and the CSS, and not the content or like anything else that's dynamically fetched from the server.
Well, it depends on how your application is. And the beautiful thing is the tools like Gatsby and Next.js is what they do is they pre-compile all those different HTML files. So if you have 1,000 blog posts, it's going to create 1,000 HTML files for you where people can visit that specific HTML file, and then it hydrates the rest of the application. Kind of similar to what we were talking about server side. It's just it does that at compile time as opposed to request time.
Okay, that's interesting. So I think when you are building a blog or something like that, just React, Angular, or Vue, that's not the best kind of website that you can, best kind of framework that you can move forward with when you want a blog, because you don't want to download the complete React or Angular framework when someone visits your website. So that's where server-side rendered or Jamstack websites come into the picture. But is Jamstack a good option for all kind of projects? Like, is there some kind of projects that it's not good with?
So I would definitely be hesitant to say that it's like the perfect solution for anything. But I really do feel like there's a lot of potential that really you can solve kind of any kind of project with the Jamstack. That said, it really depends on your particular use case. Like one good example is an e-commerce site. Like if you have maybe like 5 products, and that might take a very short time to actually compile out all those pages. Whereas if you have like a million products, like you don't want to wait for all those different products to actually get compiled out. Exactly. Now, that said, tools like Netlify and Vercel are coming out with different ways of handling those things. With Netlify, it's called distributed persistent rendering, where the idea is it's not going to build every single route when you deploy a site. It's only going to deploy or build those routes when you first hit that route. So it'll hit it, it'll get cached, and then for everybody else, it'll be that static experience.
Oh, wow. Okay. I still feel
so we just went into a wormhole.
Yeah. No. I mean, I will definitely read and learn more about Jamstack. If we love it, maybe we'll even make some videos on it on our channel.
There we go.
Yeah, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Let's say I'm using Angular, right? I have basically I'm using TypeScript or JavaScript to basically fetch JSON objects to be able to show something to the user. So as you said, if I have a million products, or let's say I have a website with which I can control my whole house. Let's say I have a million devices, I have hotels and everything which I want to control. For those, is it still a good option to be using Jamstack? Or is it better to just use Angular? Because let's say I'm on device number 1 and I just want to turn off the light, because that's a very heavy requested kind of. I'm making a lot of requests with my backend, and I'm only fetching, let's say, device number 1 and not device number 1,000,001. So I'm just trying to think. I'm just trying to think out loud. Is it still a good framework, a good option for that? But I guess I'll have to read more about it.
So yeah, I still think with that many number of items that you're trying to work with, like it's kind of where it starts hitting its limitations. However, with the newer technology that the different hosting and deployment providers are coming out with, it's becoming less and less of a problem, and those limitations are slowly getting peeled back. So it's kind of an interesting space to be in right now because of things like that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good question.
Yeah, and we know Jamstack is definitely hot. Like we are hearing it. Like it's like 1 year ago, I never heard about it, and since last 1 year, that's the only thing I'm hearing everywhere.
Yep. Yeah. I think the thing that I like the most about it is I feel like there's a bit of course, any web app can be complex, but there's a bit of simplicity, like, and beauty about how the projects are actually served. Because if you're doing it in a truly static way, like a lot of the applications that I build, I dump it into static storage via Netlify, and Netlify serves it. So I don't have to worry about things like servers and maintaining any of that stuff. I compile out my website, I put it in that static storage, and I can set it and forget it. There's kind of a beautiful simplicity to that.
Yeah.
Okay, so Jamstack itself comprises of some tools that we need to use to host the website and to like code the website. Is that it?
So kind of. I mean, Netlify is probably the biggest player in the Jamstack game right now. I mean, they kind of coined the term, but Netlify is definitely not required in order to do that. It's really the main gist is being able to serve those static files from a CDN. So that's where the lines get blurred. Some people say like, well, can't it be server rendered but cached with a CDN in front of it? It kind of goes against the philosophy of it, I feel, but you know, it is what it is. But the nature of it is there's a lot of different static storage options out there, right? I mean, even like your desktop computer, if you have an HTML file there, like that's static storage, right? But things like AWS S3, if you're familiar with it, or like every hosting provider has their own static solution. It's just Netlify makes it really easy to deploy the sites because you can hook up your GitHub repository and it'll handle that entire process for you, which is a really nice thing.
So let's say you have to choose one. You have to choose Next.js, Basic React, and some kind of Jamstack. What would you choose?
So Next.js is definitely is my framework of choice right now. I'm having a lot of fun with it. It's just I really enjoy the like developer APIs that they have for working with things like data and all that stuff. So that's definitely where I'm at right now.
Okay, perfect.
But who knows what's coming in the future?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true. Like a few years ago, I guess maybe 3 years or 4 years ago, Vue was the hot topic and everyone was talking about Vue, and it's like Vue is better than Angular React. That's a new thing. And same with blockchain. Maybe a couple of years ago, everyone wanted to learn blockchain. So maybe if something better comes up, we'll all be learning that and talking about that.
Yeah, and there really is still a strong, vibrant Vue community. It's just just not something I've ever spent the time to dig into. I enjoy working with React so much. And I probably should give it more of a chance, but I feel really productive and I really enjoy working with React. So that's why I kind of just stick with it.
Makes sense. Yeah, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, does Jamstack stand for something? Does it have a full form?
So that's a funny question as well, because originally, like when they first started marketing it stood for JavaScript APIs and Markup. And I still use that as an acronym, the terminology, but they're trying to push away from that because from their perspective, I guess it causes confusion when you're trying to explain what it is, because a Jamstack site doesn't require JavaScript, right? It can be literally just HTML and CSS, and it's a Jamstack site because it's a static site that you're serving. So that's why they're trying to push away from it. But I still think I still like to kind of position as JavaScript API and Markup, because a lot of the tooling and things in the ecosystem still have a lot of JavaScript comprised of it, and ultimately enriching applications with APIs.
Pretty good.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking when you said it can be only HTML and CSS. So how would you code the backend if you need routes, if you need APIs? So, I mean, you got to have one programming language to code the backend.
Well, I mean, it can be a bunch of static links to HTML files, right? And I think under the hood, a lot of these applications, I think a lot of them support no JavaScript in the browser, where those links on the page, the routes that get built out, it would just link to a separate HTML file. So you wouldn't load that in the browser. It would just still make another server request to load the next page, like a traditional website in the past.
Oh, so it will be
good stuff.
So we're like back to square one. That's what you
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the nice thing is, if you enjoy developing, like, there's still something to be said again about building a website by hand in an HTML file versus using some of these more powerful frameworks, because it does give you a lot of options for how you can really enhance your development workflow.
Yeah, no, for sure. I'm the kind of person who, like, I do front end and back end both, but I don't enjoy being creative with front end. So if I have to make a table or if I have to make a button, I would just go to the material library, like React material or Angular material, and I would just do the basic stuff. Like, I just want my website to work. I don't want to make animations or anything. I just like my philosophy is, if something exists, just use it. If you want a table, just
don't reinvent the wheel, basically.
Exactly.
But for that reason, my websites are really similar to each other. Like, if you see one of my websites, you'll be able to guess the other one is also by me. That's a drawback, but for sure.
No, I'm the same way. I wouldn't, because I'm still like a designer, but I'm not like a creative designer. I'm more of like a functional designer, where I can create things that are very usable, but not necessarily the most creative and beautiful things ever. It's amazing because as somebody that kind of watches Twitter, I have a lot of friends and follow a lot of profiles that are posting these really crazy creative development things, and it just kind of blows my mind with what they're doing. But yeah, I'm very simple with my work.
Yeah, same here. And this girl over here, she doesn't even like front end.
No?
Yeah, no. I work mostly in the backend.
Okay,
that's my comfort zone.
Are you still using like JavaScript with Node, or are you using a different language?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I use Node.js, JavaScript, and Python. So yeah, that's my comfort zone. That's my bread and butter.
Nice. That's awesome.
I was saying that once she worked in the front end and she was like, someone is asking me to change the position of this button and increase the padding by 2 pixels. That's just waste of time and everything.
Yeah.
No, I have worked with a lot of teams where a lot of the backend developers were afraid of touching the front end and afraid of touching any CSS. So I totally understand what you're saying. At the same time, as a front end engineer, sometimes like the backend languages, like I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with Perl. I worked at a company where it was a Perl backend, and I couldn't be productive at all in it. Like I tried, but I just couldn't do anything.
Yeah, no, that's
yeah, it happens. I mean, you kind of have I would not say comfort zone, because like some people tend to take it negatively, but like kind of a preference for front end, back end. I mean, it's okay to have a preference.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. I was interviewing recently because, as I told you, I just switched jobs, and one of the company, they asked me, what do you prefer, front end or back end? And I was like, I really do prefer being full stack, because I like to see how the back end works and then how to use it in the front end. And they were like, no, you are just saying that. We want your preference. Everyone likes something more than the other. And I was like,
yeah,
that's funny. Yeah. No, I could totally see that you would enjoy that part of it. See, I'm the opposite. I can be productive as a full stack developer, but I just really enjoy working with the front end. So it's, if I have to, like, I enjoy being dangerous with it where I can do things with it, but it's just not something that I enjoy doing if I can't help it.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
So since like programming is like an ever growing field, so we kind of like ask this question to everyone, because we want to gather different opinions and see like how it can help the viewers and us. And since it's like, ever growing field, how do you keep up with the new tools and new trends in technology?
Like a few years ago, AngularJS was everything.
Exactly.
Then Angular just completely shifted and came
there was like Angular 2 and 3, which was like completely different.
And then React,
AngularJS,
Split.
Yeah, now we have Jamstack and so who knows what we're gonna have tomorrow.
And these are just one of the few ones, the major ones, but I know there are others as well, like and even small libraries, like there are so many. So
yeah, so like what's your schedule? How do you do it?
Yeah, no, it's challenging. It feels like every day there's another new tool and framework out there. But I think most of the stuff that I see is on Twitter. I kind of have Twitter going on in the background. People who have seen my screen before call me crazy because I literally have notifications that keep going up every time a tweet comes in TweetDeck. But like that's kind of where I get like my development news and stuff. But I also follow a few different newsletters. There's like a JavaScript newsletter, a general front end one. That way I can kind of keep my ears to the ground and see what people are talking about in the community. The thing that's nice about being a content creator is, since I create a lot of these tutorials about different tools, I kind of get to learn it as I'm doing that. So if there's a particular library, like I'll learn it just so that I can make that intro because I'm kind of interested in doing it. And by doing so, I'm also helping other people with it, right? So it's a kind of mix of stuff, but I'd say definitely Twitter and newsletters for me.
We recently joined Twitter. So like a few months ago, we never used Twitter. We have always heard about it, but we had no clue. Basically it was
we
just
had a clue,
ignorance.
like, we were just not on Twitter.
Like not this YouTube channel, but not even our personal profiles. Basically, we never downloaded Twitter. That's what I'm trying to say. And so let's say you have Twitter and you get like 100 notifications. Someone is talking about Laravel, PHP, Perl, Angular, React, etc. But how do you actually decide what to learn? Like, are you a kind of dangerous person who likes to experiment with everything and then see what you like, or like
the other way around?
Yeah, so I try to kind of filter out like having to see every single thing. Instead, like as those notifications come up, like if something catches my eye, I'll open it up and maybe I'll save an article in a new tab and maybe I'll get to it later. Other times I end up getting too many tabs and I have to close them all. But yeah, it's an ever going cycle with
that. I feel you.
But it's like I definitely like to learn new things, but I also try to be weary of just jumping on every single thing because I know like sometimes it's not worth spending time learning every single new tool because you really don't know what the future of that tool is. And that's not to say that not every single one doesn't have potential. It's just trying to find things that will be more meaningful for the work that I'm doing and for helping the people in the community that I'm working with.
Yeah, that's true. Like there's so many new technologies and frameworks that come out every year, every month, if I must say. And not all of them are worth spending your time on.
A very good advice that I heard once, I don't remember who told me that, but like it was the theory of repetition. So if there's a framework that catches your eye once, but like if for example, you follow a newsletter, but if they repeatedly like mention that particular framework or that tool, so you really want to check that out.
Oh, I think it was Mark Thompson.
It was Mark. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's what I mentioned.
Yeah.
Exactly. So like if you see it all over the place and multiple times, so that's when you really want to check that
Like
out.
Jamstack was.
Yeah.
Like Jamstack. Yeah. It's
Exactly.
about time now.
Yep. And that's how I was with React like years ago, like when it was first coming out. It kept, catching my eye every time people were talking about it on newsletters, like CSS tricks, Smashing Magazine. And like for a while, I didn't spend a ton of time in it, but eventually, like when I had the opportunity to start playing with it, that's when I really started to, because that's when I realized there was such a big community already with it, even when it was super young. So I knew that there was going to be momentum with something that's going to be still relevant in the future. So that's when I knew like spending my time on it wasn't going to be for nothing. And, that's kind of where I'm at.
Oh, makes sense. Makes sense.
All right. So an interesting question that we have, like we get this question from a lot of people, but the question is that what do you think are the different ways that a programmer can earn money from? So like I know there's like 9 to 5 or like W2 income in the US and like 9 to 5 jobs everywhere, and also you could tutor people in the field of computer science, and like you could do freelancing. But I want to hear like some innovative ways, if you know about them, like some creative ways that are lucrative for people.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, there's definitely a lot of different ways. As a content creator, the first thing that comes to mind is kind of writing, right? Like if you're writing a blog post and you actually start to get serious about it, there's a ton of different publications out there that really want people to start writing for. And even some of the big ones out there, they'll even pay you. Like it might be little fractions, like as you build up like the actual audience on it, but they'll pay you as you write more and more and more for it. So like that's one way. Another way is kind of I know with the open source world, it's not really as prevalent anymore, but you can still sell like libraries and applications where maybe it's just a simple $5 application you put together that does something really handy. It can do one single thing really handy, but sell it for $5 and maybe people are going to really enjoy working with it and using it.
Yeah, so that's really great. So like you said, writing and like still developing, since we're all programmers and coders and we like to build stuff. So it's good to like show your talent, and maybe like while you do a hobby project, you might as well go out and make some money off of it. So that would be great.
Exactly. And I mean, like, I'm thinking about the application part of it. Like, I'm not like an app developer in terms of like a Mac app or a Windows app, but like, I'm thinking about a lot of the small single-use applications that I built, and like, I'm willing to pay a couple dollars for them if they're doing something that's really going to help me in my day-to-day workflow, right? So that's something that people can, because like once you make it, you can put it out there and see if people will gravitate towards it.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Makes sense. For
exactly. Sure. It's a great idea. Yeah. So since we're talking about developing applications and like hosting and everything, so there's this tool, GitHub and GitLab, and like Git. Basically, everyone uses it. So how important do you think is like, so in addition to your front-end development skills and back-end development skills, how important do you think is to know Git and GitLab? Because in today's world, like everyone uses Git and GitLab.
Yeah, no, I think it's really important. And like, it's something that like, kind of thinking about it, take for granted a little bit, because I feel like it's really important for working with other people primarily, but even like working on my own projects, I find it helpful. Because I remember back in the day, like years and years ago, I would store like different zip folders of old websites because I was trying to version it, right? And I no longer have to do that. I no longer have to worry about, is my code on my computer going to get wiped out and I'm going to lose this website I've been working on for 10 years. It's now on GitHub and I don't have to worry about that. But on top of that, just even learning past the foundation of Git itself is what it opens the doors up to when you have GitHub repositories and the integrations and tools you can use on top of that, which is really cool. But yeah, if you're working in any kind of team environment, I think Git is like imperative to be able to get familiar with.
That's true. And not a long time ago, both of us students, like we have only been working full time for 2 or 3 years. Before that, we were students, and we know that a lot of great programmers who were doing masters with us in Canada, they have been working for many years and everything, but they didn't have a GitHub profile. Like someone came from India, someone came from Brazil, and they worked for 3, 4, 5 years, but they didn't have a GitHub profile. And I asked them, like, why don't you have? and they were like, we don't need GitHub because when we go to any company, they have their own GitHub, GitLab, etc., and we just use it there. Why do we need it for ourselves? Why do I need to make my own personal profile? But I really think it's really important for each and every developer to have their own profile. So what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting perspective, and I can kind of see it in two different ways, because it really depends on the company and the person that you're dealing with. For in terms of like job searching, on one hand, like if you find somebody who is going to take the time and look through your work, like having a Git profile that shows the different projects that you're working on and that you do care about the work that you're doing, like that goes a long way and can really impress somebody and show your personality. Whereas, if they don't find that, it's just, it might not necessarily be like a negative mark. It's just, there's not something there to kind of go above and beyond what they know about you from just your resume, right? And part of hiring somebody is trying to get as much context about somebody as possible so that you can make the right decision in hiring them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I would see like every company would prefer that Git or GitHub, and having a GitHub account with a few projects on, even if they're not fully complete or fully functional, is a good idea that a company will get in just 10 seconds of looking at a resume. If you share your GitHub link, at least you are on GitHub.
Yeah. As you mentioned, like in the beginning of your answer, that people take it for granted. Like they just want to focus on like how to develop the application, but like sometimes they tend to forget this part of like hosting it somewhere. Exactly. So as we talked, like it serves two purposes. One would be if you have projects on any version control system, be it Git, Bitbucket, anything. So it will serve two purposes. First would be like you will tell your prospect, your potential employer, that you know these version control systems, you know about them. And the second thing would be like it will also tell them that you have interests and hobbies outside of course curriculum as well, because you do have some hobby projects that you hosted there on like these systems.
That's true. You have kind of an online resume.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I tend to, when I'm looking for screening through applications, like I'll definitely open up the GitHub profile and kind of look around. And again, I won't count it negative if somebody doesn't have a profile or doesn't have anything on there, but it does help me kind of get more insight into the type of person that we're talking to.
For sure. Okay.
Exactly. So this is kind of the final section of our podcast that we like to call the Coders Quatro. Yeah. So here we ask, it's funny. So here we ask four same question to like all our guests. We're gonna go towards the order of decreasing difficulty. So the first question would be, what framework, technology, or language? So it's a slash between all these terms. So what framework / technology / language do you think a new developer should learn?
Well, I'm very biased towards React, of course. But in terms of Next.js and other tools, like I don't know if Next.js is actually the best for like a beginner. Like Gatsby is really nice for beginners because it has so much kind of baked in. But probably React, just because I'm so biased towards it.
Okay, no, that's fair. Makes sense.
Yes. So the next one is, when you want to learn something new, what do you prefer, watching videos or reading the documentation?
I think it depends on the documentation. I'll say videos because, some documentation isn't that great. So it's really hit or miss. And if it isn't great, I'll definitely, head over to YouTube and see if I can find somebody that can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I think my first reaction is just to like type the topic, whatever I'm working on Google. And go through the Stack Overflow links. Maybe they have like some open Jira or Git issues. Go through that, or try to find like a video where I can just get all the information.
Yeah, my first is just go on YouTube, find a video. If there's a video that can summarize it in 10 to 15 minutes, that is what I'm picking at. If not, then I look at like Free Code Camp or Traversy Media. Like usually there's a good course about 1 hour to 2 hour courses that I can basically dive into.
it's amazing how some of the YouTubers, and this isn't meant to like be like throw shade on any of the other YouTubers, but like it's amazing how much like extra some of the YouTubers put into the videos. Where like if they're introducing like a simple topic, but then they make like an hour-long video just because they're adding like their life into it, which that's their goal for their videos. But I think one of the things I try to do when I'm creating tutorials is I like to be very concise about it, because I just try to get in there and get out to help the person kind of learn it. But it's interesting the different kind of styles that people have.
I have to say, I've been noticing your background, your setup. It looks really cool. We need to learn from you.
Thank you.
We just have a wall behind us, but yours looks
It's
good.
a nice looking wall, though.
Yeah, with the door on the side. Yeah. So, all right. So moving on to the final question. No, not the final. I think this is the third.
Question number 3.
Yeah, third question. So, do you think going to college or university is important in the field of computer science?
That's another good question. So I don't think in our time that there should be any sort of requirement for going to a university. I definitely don't think that should be a requirement. Do I think that going to college or university helps people develop like as a human being? Yeah, I definitely do. And I definitely think there is like some good things about it, but I don't believe that somebody needs to go to a university to be successful in programming.
That's a good answer. That's a fair answer.
Yeah, I think that's the most common answer that we've been getting so far. The people now think it's the same viewpoint, and it's true. I mean, we have really good examples out there to prove this point. Like, it's not a compulsion now. If you want to be a coder, if you want to be a programmer, do something in the field of computer science, like be it any domain, it's not a compulsion now to go to the university. Of course, if you do that, that will be like, it's great. It's going to give you a perspective. It's going to like expose you to different options that you can work with. But like, of course, it's not a compulsion today. The DIY learning because of like YouTubers like yourself.
Exactly.
Right.
I think with like university, and I don't know if it's worth the price tag, but like you learn so much beyond the technical parts of it. Like, of course you learn a lot about the technical parts, but you like, I feel like you learn how to work with people, you learn how to interact with others and socialize, and kind of be like an adult that can go out and function in a real workplace. And again, I don't know if it's worth the ton of money that it is for university, at least in the United States, but it's interesting.
Oh yeah.
We came from India a few years ago, and we were thinking about going to US first. And we saw the tuition. We saw the tuition fee, and we were like, no, not gonna happen. Especially the international student fee, because let's say for you, I'm assuming you are a US citizen. So for you, the fee is, let's say 100,000. For us, it would be 200,000, just because we are international students. And
that's awful.
Plus the conversion.
Oh yeah, like,
right.
I mean, it kills us.
$1 equals like 75 bucks in our currency. So it's like no, that's not gonna happen.
I don't know. It's hard. And like I come from a privileged place where I was able to go to school, and so like I do want to come at a perspective where like I don't think it is required, but I do definitely think that there are things that if you have the opportunity that might help you.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what I say to people who do ask me that should I go to a university or college. And I'd ask them, like, what do you usually do? Like, are you working somewhere? Are you like, is money a problem for you? And if not, then yes, go to a university, because otherwise you won't really do anything. Like, you have to be absolutely motivated in order to learn something. Otherwise, you won't be able to. Now, if you don't have a motivation and you do want to get into this field and money is not a problem, then going to university will definitely don't hurt you. Like, it will only give you some positives. Because
you have that compulsion there to just like, study, learn new stuff, and then pass the exam. So
but I've definitely worked with some. I'd say some of the best developers I've worked with never went to college, and it's amazing, you know. And I'm not saying all of the best developers. I'm saying some of the best developers I've worked with. So it's definitely not something that you need. It's
for sure.
Perfect. So
final question.
What's your favorite programming language?
JavaScript. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a quick and easy one.
Yeah. We kind of figured
So-
that out, but we still have to ask.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Perfect. It was really nice talking to you, Colby. I mean, first, although we have, but we still want to thank you again for coming on our channel. We really appreciate it. We are a very small YouTube channel, and you were totally on board on coming over here. So we really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for thinking of me to bring on, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.